Hi there and welcome. We are coming to you live from TMDSAS, and we are so happy that you are joining us today for our medical applicant workshop. So I am joined with my colleagues, Brianna Beets, who is an applicant liaison and resource developer, and Audrey Mason, who is also an applicant liaison. They're going to help us today as we work through some tips and tricks for improving your application. So before we get started, we just have a quick question for you all. Now we're coming to you from Austin, Texas, where our office is located. We are experiencing some beautiful spring weather, and we'd like to know where you are joining us from. So we have a question Audrey's going to pull up for us. And you can go to the website here, pollev.com /TMDSAS 775, or you can send us your response. Now, if you aren't able to go to this page at the moment, you can also just drop it in the chat, but we would love to know where you are joining us from. So please take a moment to do that. I see some responses coming in. Also someone in the chat. Okay, some out-of-staters. Love it. Yeah, it's really filling up there. Great. So this kind of gives you a sense of where people are joining us from. And it looks to be a real mixture here in the States. So that is excellent. Well, welcome to you all. We're so happy that you're here with us. We're going to jump into our presentation now. And again, there we go. You are here for the medical application workshop. So the purpose is to help you all prepare for the application process. One thing to keep in mind, we will be taking questions. Our team is going to be here to help answer some questions through the chat throughout the presentation, and then we will have some time at the end to take some questions live. So let's continue. All right, so we're going to start off with just some important things, some important general things to keep in mind about your application. First off, when it comes to contacting TMDSAS, this can happen at any point in the process, either before or after you submit your application. The official mode of communication is through the application portal. So once you have that account, you will have the ability to send us a message via that portal. That's the official mode, so please keep that in mind. We try to respond to everything within 2 business days. We're also available via email, but like I said, if you already have an account on file with us, then go ahead and reach out to us via the portal. If you need to send us an email, you can do that at info@tmdsas.com. You can also give us a call. All right, so some things to keep in mind about processing. So it takes 2 to 4 weeks to process your application. That varies a little bit depending on where we are in the cycle and the number of applications that we have to work through. Your applicant liaison, to whom that you've already met, will reach out when your application has been processed, and they'll do that by sending you a message through that portal that I just talked about. Some of the things that we review during that process is we review your residency. We look at your coursework, and this helps to form those GPA calculations, and then we send it off to the schools. Keep in mind that for application processing, additional input or documentation may be required. So, for example, residency, which we'll go in a little bit deeper in a moment. But in those instances, we will reach out to you with a message. So it's best to keep up to date with those messages from TMDSAS and respond in a timely manner to avoid any processing delays. All right, so let's talk about developing your timeline when it comes to your application. So there's a 2-week period here, as you see in our timeline. The application opens May 2nd and can be submitted beginning May 16th. There's a 2-week time period built in, and we strongly encourage applicants to take those 2 full weeks to work on their application. We encourage that at any point in the cycle. Don't rush the process. Take your time. Spend at least 2 weeks working on this application before you submit it. You'll also see here that there is going to be a short window of time to apply for the UT-RGV School of Pediatric Medicine for the EY 2022 cycle. Now, the cycle that we're going into is EY 2023. So there's going to be a little bit of overlap in terms of this new school and this new program type for TMDSAS. If that's something that you're eligible for or you're interested in, we're going to have a whole set of communication and instructions about it. So just be sure to keep up to date with us and with, like I said, that communication through the message portal. Let's talk about some important dates here. So as a medical applicant, of course, we've already talked about when the application opens. The deadline is November 1st. That's the final day to submit your application. We also see here that on our timeline, October 15th is when offers begin to go out. Pre-match offers start for Texas residents also on that date. Again, that November 1st application deadline. November 15th deadline for letters and test scores. We will talk about the match process and why February 2023 is important, as well as March 2023. We'll watch a whole video about the match process, but those 2 deadlines refer to that process. We'll get a little bit more into that in a moment. Okay, so when it comes to timing your application, again, it can take up to 4 weeks for TMDSAS to process and transmit your application to the school. So that's one time frame to keep in mind. Another important one is your test score. So once those are released to us, it takes about 36 hours for them to show up on your application. For your letters of evaluation, once those are submitted to us and received, it takes about 7 to 10 business days to process and upload those to your application. And then your transcripts, those are only upon request. Once requested by TMDSAS and submitted to us, it takes about 21 business days for processing of those documents. All of these items, you can always see a status of through the application portal on your status page. You'll also receive a notification once they have been uploaded to your application. So for the letters and the transcripts, you'll get a notification about that. Like I said, once your application has been transmitted to the schools, you'll receive a direct message from your applicant liaison informing you that your application has now made it to the next step. So some information about secondary applications and the CASPER test. So some schools require a secondary application. It's definitely important to learn the school's individual process here, because some of those are by invitation only, whereas others you'll need to go on to the school's website to initiate that process. It is of utmost importance to know that TMDSAS does not have any hand in the secondary applications. We are only here to process the primary application. So any questions about secondaries should be directed to the individual schools. Same for the CASPER test and releasing the CASPER score. The school's websites are going to have the information you need for each school in terms of deadlines and requirements. Again, this is not something that's managed by TMDSAS, but you can find information about which schools are requiring this on our website. So if you haven't checked that out yet, that's a good place to start just to get familiar with this requirement. All right, let's see. So a little bit more about timing your application. Now, there's definitely no need to rush. This is a fairly lengthy application window. Again, the application opens May 2nd, closes November 1st. That's a very long chunk of time. Now, most of you are probably not going to wait until November 1st to submit your application. You're likely going to submit it far earlier. But here's just a visual on seeing kind of what happens as we progress through the cycle. So we're looking at the month of May. Now that what's in red is, you as the applicant working on your application. Then that 2 to 4 week period where TMDSAS is processing your application. And then in green, we see that's when the schools have the opportunity to review your application and to conduct interviews. As we get further along in the cycle, you see the red gets longer and the green gets shorter. So essentially here, the longer, or the later, if you will, that you submit that application, the time that the schools have to review and conduct interviews, that kind of shrinks, right? So that's just something to keep in mind. It's nothing to be alarmed about or worried about. Just think about that when you're balancing when you want to submit. Okay, how much time am I leaving for the schools to review my file? Ultimately, at the end of the day, you should submit when you feel most ready to do so, and that you're able to put forth the best application that's the best reflection of you. So I have a question for you, and we are going to direct you now to our second question. Now you can either go to the website here, polev.com, or you can text in your answer to us by texting TMDSAS 775 to 37607, and then send your response. And the question we have here is kind of a personal one. What launched you on your path towards a degree in medicine? Awesome. So we got some answers coming in. Personal health experiences, inspiration from a childhood physician. Shadowing and developing a profound admiration. So some activities you were involved in. My grandmother as a nurse, so inspiration from family members in the healthcare. Shadowing. Mother as a nurse. Personal traumatic experience and desire to help others. So these are obviously very impactful. They have kind of spurred you on in this direction, and we thank you so much for sharing. I think there are probably many people that are tuning in now that can identify with a lot of what's shared. We've seen kind of over and over maybe a family member or a personal experience or relationship that you've had with someone. So it's great to hold on to that kind of inspiration as you work through this process. It's a long process. You know better than anybody else what this is like. So thank you so much for sharing your responses with us. We really appreciate that. So we're going to keep going, and we're going to get into Texas residency. So this is a big part of the application process with TMDSAS. Now, you might be familiar already with the 90-10 law here in Texas, which means that 90% of the seats at medical schools must go to Texas residents. So that means that determining residency is a key part of the application review process. So let's take a look at what that entails. So per the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, there are two bases for claims of residency. And the first option here is residency through high school graduation. So a person that graduated from a Texas high school and resided in the state the 36 months prior to that graduation are considered a Texas resident. They have earned that residency outright. Second option for someone who did not graduate from a Texas high school is residency by establishing domicile. So that there are a couple ways that a person can establish domicile. That would be through gainful employment, property ownership, marriage to a Texas resident, or if they own and operate a Texas business. This is the same if it is the individual as an applicant who is seeking to establish residency, or if they are a dependent of parents who are in that process of establishing residency here in Texas. Just some guidelines to keep in mind. So in this process, there is an initial computer determination that is made. This is based on your responses to the proof of residency section of the application. Now, important to know that that determination is not final, it's just the initial one. Once your application is submitted and is being processed, our team conducts a thorough review of not only this section of your application, but many others that help us to make an official determination. Once we're processing, we might require documents to be able to make that official determination. So that's just another reminder why it's important to keep up with your messages, because that will be the way that we reach out to you to ask for those documents. Can we go ahead and share a link here in our chat? We've got a link to the residency page of our website that has tons more information. Now, a couple things here. We've got an app tip here, and this screenshot is literally directly from the application. This is what this page will look like when you are able to start working in it. So if you are a Texas resident and you're currently studying out of state, then you should select your legal state of residence, which is likely not going to be where you are studying, right? So keep that in mind. Some folks might misinterpret that, and that can cause a delay in processing. Right, now, if we do request documents, again, you will receive a notification from us, a message to send those in. You'll be able to upload them to the portal once we make that request. This is an example of some common documents that we request, just based on how a person is claiming their Texas residency. So, for example, if someone is basing their residency on property ownership, then we would likely ask for that, mortgage documentation, and we probably wouldn't ask for, business documentation, right? So it depends on how you are claiming Texas residency will determine which documents we request. This is why you can't upload those documents beforehand, because we have to review that section of your application to make sure that we are requesting the proper documents. Just another, tip here, in order to avoid any processing delays in terms of these residency documents, be sure to send documents that are fully legible. So good scans or images of those documents, please. All right, so we are going to get into your activities. This is a pretty big section of the application. Your personal biography is made up of all of your activities. Some important things to keep in mind here: there is a 300 character count limit per activity, but there's no limit to activities. So if it was something that was important to you that you participated in, then by all means, please include that activity in your application. And these activities need to cover all of the time from high school graduation to the planned matriculation. So even beyond when you submit the application. You can enter each activity only once. However, there are two exceptions to this rule. If an activity is both healthcare and employment, then you would enter it in both of those sections. Or if there's any activity that also has a leadership component, you would also enter it in the leadership area and in that respective activity. Something really key to keep in mind here is that there are no changes that can be made to your activities after submitting your application. This is locked. We do not allow any changes to this. However, we understand that plans change. You might have a planned activity that you no longer participate in. Maybe you're doing something else. In those instances, it is perfectly okay to create an addendum to your application. This is just a document that outlines any changes to your activities, and you can take that with you to interviews to keep the schools updated on what you've been doing. So let's look at how you can categorize your personal biography. So it's useful to think of your activities in terms of your achievements, your experiences, your meaningful experiences, and then of course your upcoming activities. Remember that you must select the best category for each activity. We've talked about the exceptions there. And we're going to review the guidelines for each of those activities. But I just want to point out, that meaningful experiences, and we'll go into that a little bit more here, but this is an opportunity to select 3 of the activities that you've already listed and to explain why they are the most meaningful. I also want to just remind you of your planned activities that can include activities that are ongoing, but that will continue in the future. So keep that in mind. It doesn't have to be a brand new activity. It can be something that you already started and you will be continuing after you submit. So let's look at the individual activity types. So we've got academic recognition, which includes academic honors, awards, and other recognitions received since graduating from high school. Non-academic recognition are, again, non-academic awards or recognitions since graduating high school. Leadership roles or positions of responsibility held since graduating from high school. For this one in particular, in the absence of a specific role or title, you can list leadership qualities that you have learned from other opportunities. We have employment here, so this is all paid experience, not the same as volunteering. And again, if employment also happens to be healthcare related, it can go in both sections. We have our research activities. For research, this is paid or volunteer. Since high school graduation, you can also talk about any of those outcomes. So any publications, abstracts, presentations, or posters that came out of your research, you can talk about those in the application as well. We've got your healthcare activity. So these should be direct healthcare related activities that you have participated in. And here are examples. So shadowing, scribing, research, serving or working as a patient care tech, a nurse. You might have experience in shadowing. Now, if you shadow multiple doctors at the same location, then you will create one entry per location and then list each doctor in the description. However, if each doctor you shadowed had a different specialty, then you can go ahead and make a separate entry per specialty. Okay, now community service and extracurricular are also important to share in the application, so be sure to talk about those experiences as well. And then we get back to those meaningful activities. So again, meaningful activities are going to be 3 activities that were the most meaningful of the ones that you've already listed. And you have extra space to talk about these and discuss why they were so impactful. So these should only be activities that you have completed or are ongoing. Of course, you can't talk about how meaningful something is that you haven't already done. So these would not be activities with a future start date. And then lastly, we have our planned activity. So you will indicate future activities you plan on participating in between the application deadline and August of 2023. This could be future employment, research, healthcare, community service, or extracurricular activities. And again, as I mentioned, these can be things that you are currently doing and will continue into the future. So we have another question for you. We appreciate your participation in the first two. So when it comes to your meaningful activities, what is one of your most memorable activities that you've participated in? And again, if you aren't able to send it to through text or on the Poll EV website, you can also just drop it in the chat. But we love to know what has been one of your most memorable activities. Okay, clinical research, emphatically clinical research, independent study in medical humanities, being a learning assistant for freshman biology, working as a pediatric EMT, wow. Tutoring high school students at a homeless shelter, shadowing. Let's see, are there any more? Rural health volunteering. Shadowing, volunteering in a clinic, and getting to interact with patients. Doing what I can to help people afford their medications so far. Awesome. Wow. So such a diverse set of experiences here. This is amazing. We really appreciate you all sharing this. And again, you probably see some responses here that maybe really resonate with you or with someone you know, with your personal story. So again, these activities, be sure to include them in the application, and you really want to make that connection as to why they were so meaningful for you. What did you learn? How did it prepare you for this process? As you continue to work towards this goal. So again, thank you so much for your responses and for participating. We're going to get back into our presentation here. We're going to talk about coursework. So the coursework is a really dense portion of the application. And so we have just some things to keep in mind as you work through it. So what's included in your GPA? This is a common question. Now, TMDSAS calculates over 100 different GPAs, and they can get very specific. So we're talking about, we can have an overall GPA that looks at every single course you've ever taken, and down to very specifically the biology GPA of the fall term of your freshman year. So very specific here. All of these GPAs are calculated per the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board rules when it comes to GPA calculation. You can find more information about that on our website, also in our applicant guide. One thing to know if you aren't already familiar with this BCPM acronym, this stands for biology, chemistry, physics, and math. So any courses that are taken in those course areas will also be included in your BCPM GPA. Any course that is approved as a prerequisite automatically is included in this GPA. Now, on the right here, we see some courses that might be exceptions to this, right? So courses that are for non-science majors might be included in your BCPM GPA, but you're probably not going to see them as meeting prerequisites. So you won't see them on your PCR, and we'll talk about what that PCR is in a moment. Graduate courses can also be included in the science or BCPM GPA, depending on the course topic, but they are not eligible to fulfill prerequisites. The only exception to that is statistics, but every other graduate level course cannot meet that prerequisite requirement. Foreign courses will not be included in the BCPM GPA, nor as part of your prerequisite coursework, and neither will developmental or audited courses. It's also important to keep in mind that when it comes to calculating your GPA, all of your coursework is included. So even if you retook a course and your university granted you a grade replacement, If it shows up on your official transcript, then it's going to be included in your application. And so that sometimes accounts for a slight disparity in GPA calculation because, like I said, everything is factored in for TMDSAS. We also don't factor in pluses or minuses, so you should include those if they appear on your transcript. However, when it comes to the calculation, we just calculate the flat grade. Okay, so when it comes to entering your courses, exactly as I just said, maybe I got a little bit ahead of myself there, but courses must be entered exactly as they appear on your official transcript. So go term by term, course by course to be sure that you're entering your coursework correctly. Please use the course listings, and we're going to, we've got a link there in the chat for the course listings on our website. If one is not available for your school, then please have your pre-health advisor contact us. They can send us an email at info@tmdsas.com to let us know what the course recommendations are from their institution. As you see here on the right, we've got the different course categories. So you will be using these to code your coursework in the application. So earlier I mentioned this document, PCR, and this stands for the Prescribed Coursework Report. So here, this is going to be generated after your application has been processed and we have been able to evaluate your coursework. And this document here will list all of the courses that were approved as prerequisites, plus it will also include any engineering and natural and physical science courses. Now, I want to point out that your engineering or natural and physical science courses are not going to be included as prerequisites, but they will appear on the same document, and they will also have their own GPA calculation. So this is important as you work through the process and work through the cycle, because you might see that you have deficiencies that you might not have been aware of. And it's important to catch those early on so that you can resolve the deficiency before matriculation. Because if you don't resolve it, it might impede your ability to matriculate. As soon as your application is transmitted, your liaison will send you a message. I talked about this at the beginning of our presentation today. And in that message, it will include instructions to go ahead and review your PCR. Like I said, it's important to catch these. If you have any questions about your coursework or how anything was coded, you can send your liaison a message and we will work with you through that process. All right, so we're going to get into letters of evaluation, which is another requirement for medical applicants. There are a couple of different types of letter options. So one type is a health professions advisory committee packet or committee letter. You'll want to ask your advisor if this is something that is offered at your school. But essentially, it is up to your the health professions committee to determine how many letters are included in this packet. And you will have the ability to submit one additional letter if you go the route of an HPAC. So it'd be the HPAC and one additional letter if you would like. In terms of individual letters, 3 are required, but you can submit up to 4. Each evaluator will submit the letter directly to TMDSAS, and there is a whole slew of instructions on how to do that. When it comes to the HPAC, if you go through that route, it's important that you release your application to your advisor. So here's just a screenshot of what this looks like in the application, but it's under the college's attended questions section. And if you are having an HPAC delivered to TMDSAS, you need to click yes, and then indicate the school that is sending that letter to us. If you don't do this, this can result in some processing delays. So you want to make sure you release your info to your advisor. You can track the progress or status of your letters via the status page. This is something that I mentioned before. And if you need to change evaluators, you can do that simply by sending us an internal message. If you haven't yet submitted your application, you can change that yourself. Now, the only caveat to this is if we've already received a letter from that advisor, we will not make a change to that evaluator. So keep that in mind if you need to make that request. When it comes to requirements for letters, TMDSAS checks that these items are all met in order for a letter to be approved. So it must be on official letterhead. It needs to have evaluator contact information, so that's a phone number, email address, have your name, be signed by the evaluator, and have a date. Now, the schools may prefer that letters are written after May 2021, so not older than a year in terms of these letters. However, if you are a reapplicant, you may reuse your letters up to one cycle. However, you would still need to upload them and enter all of the evaluator information. We won't do that. We won't roll that information over. All right, so we're going to talk about some special programs and features that apply to medical school applicants. So first thing, we've got some dual degree programs. Some schools have these programs that you can apply to via TMDSAS or another application service. Some examples include combined MD, MPH, or MD, PhD programs. If you're interested in something like this, then check out our application guide to learn more about it. There are also some schools that participate in early decision programs. So in these instances, you would apply to the one individual school for early admissions consideration. Applicants must be a Texas resident in order to qualify and will be given preference based on the competitiveness of their GPA and MCAT score. The participating schools that have early decision programs are Texas Tech, Health Science Center School of Medicine, University of North Texas, Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine, and UTRGV School of Medicine. Some benefits here are that these applicants interview earlier on in the cycle, so in August or September, and acceptances go out very early in September, by September 15th, I should say. Now, if someone is not accepted into an early decision program, then they do have the ability to then send on their application to any other school or schools of their choice. And then we also have this unique feature of the TMDSAS match. So in the match process, TMDSAS administers this process for all Texas resident medical applicants. So out-of-state residents would not participate in the match. The process kind of goes like this, where the applicants rank all of the schools at which they've interviewed according to their preference for attendance. And then the medical schools also submit their individual rankings of the applicants they've interviewed. And then the magic happens where applicants are then matched kind of based on those preferences at those institutions. And we are going to play a video here that can actually explain this much better than I can. So let's pull that up. And apologies if you can't hear it. Let's see. I think. Yeah, we need to share our audio, and our apologies for that. Okay, so we've got no sound. So let's see. I'm not sure. Okay. We're experiencing technical difficulties here. Our team members looking into getting the audio shared. If not, that's okay. You know, I know that we've got only 20 minutes left of our presentation here. We can send this to you all. We're going to share a link where you can watch this video, but this really breaks down the process so that you can become familiar with what the match process is all about, how you can participate in this, what are the steps you need to take, and just really make sense of that whole process. And again, sorry folks for that. We will keep going. So let's see. We're going to talk about some support resources as an applicant through TMDSAS. So the first thing that we use is our application guide. If you ever submitted an application with TMDSAS, or you kind of played around on our website in the past couple of cycles, you might have come across the application handbook, which was designed to be the step-by-step guide through the TMDSAS application. Well, our handbook has undergone a complete makeover and is now being fully integrated into our website rather than being a standalone document. And the idea here is that it'll make searching for your answers a much more just seamless process. So this guide includes instructions for all sections of the application. It provides some tips and important notices, and also kind of highlights some of those common pitfalls to avoid so that you don't experience any processing delays. And it's also where you'll find our TMDSAS policy so that you know what is expected of you as an applicant, as well as what you can expect from us as an application service. We also want to invite you to check out our newsroom. So Inside Health Education is the home for existing resources like Courage sessions, the Inside Health Education podcast, articles from TMDSAS and JAMP, as well as deans and other members of admissions teams from the pre-health community. You'll also find support resources from your health professions advisors, and these articles really cover the full spectrum. So they talk about, some really big picture things like how to develop a support system, as well as, some of the kind of finer elements of completing the application, like how to enter your AP coursework. So we highly encourage you to check out this resource. Another resource we have, so the newer resource here is our statistics dashboard. So we used to publish just these kind of straightforward statistics, but rather now we have these dashboards, and I'm just going to pull one up just to kind of demonstrate how to use these. So let's share that. And we encourage you to check them out. You can, play with the different stats here. So maybe you want to look at the MCAT B distribution, and you want to see how this looked for folks who matriculated. Maybe you look at, in addition to that, so you see the data kind of changes, you look specifically at Texas residents. What did that look like? So check out this feature. We've got a link to the dashboard so you can, spend some time looking at these, playing around with these stats. You could probably spend all day looking at this, looking at GPA, test scores, some demographic information as well. So please check that resource out. I'm going to get here. We also have our office hours. Now, these, if you haven't checked them out yet, these are weekly live Q&A sessions that are hosted by TMDSAS support, and they address these frequently asked topics throughout the cycle. So let's see. We've got a question for you. Our last question from us, I should say. Now, which area of the application are you most concerned about and or have questions about? So let us know. Okay, coursework activities and the lead. Coursework's on the lead. Okay, activities. All right. No one's worried about letters of evaluation. Okay, great. Always great when we can at least eliminate, one common fear, one common concern. Okay, so we see activities are in the lead right now. Thank you for sharing that. And we will have a little bit of time at the end to go over some of these questions. All right. So in addition to this workshop that you are participating in now, we have a whole host of previously recorded workshops that are available for you to check out if you see any of these other kind of categories or populations might fit your needs. We also have one more upcoming workshop that'll be hosted Monday, April 25th. And this is just ask us anything about applying. So we're going to be here to take your questions. In addition to these workshops, we have some very special panels with the schools, and those are taking place next week on the same platform. So we highly recommend that you check out the panel with the medical school next Wednesday, April 20th at 1 p.m. This is an opportunity to ask questions directly to some of these admissions officers. So please save the date and tune in if you can. Again, if you cannot make it, these will all be recorded and available to watch on our YouTube channel. So that is it from me. I appreciate all of your participation and all of our questions. And I see some more questions coming in from the chat. Thank you for your time, you all. If you are able to stick around, we'll be here for another 10 minutes or so to take some questions. And if we aren't able to get to your question today, you can always send us a question at info@tmdsas.com. If you already have an account, you can send us a message through the portal. Or if you have the time, go ahead and tune into one of those upcoming panels with the medical school or our final workshop on the 25th. So thank you all for your time. And we are going to, I have one more thing to do, to share. And we can keep this up while questions come in. But we encourage you to go ahead and sign up for that newsletter for our newsroom. We have, a whole calendar of content that'll be coming out soon. So we encourage you to take advantage of this resource by scanning here. And I see we have one question already. Will interviews be remote this year? Thank you, Sophia, for your question. And the answer is there's likely to be a mix. So some schools have indicated in person, some have indicated remote. And so that information will be made available on our website, as well as the school's respective website. So just be prepared for kind of a mixed bag there. Will our application be processed if we are still waiting for our MCAT score at that time? Great question, and the answer is yes. So TMDSAS does not hold or delay processing if your scores have not yet been received. We will process and transmit your application to the schools. Just keep in mind that the schools have their own review process, and they might not consider your application until those scores come in. If a foreign course is part of our study abroad program and has a domestic transcript grade, does it count? If the course was accepted by your home institution and your home institution granted that credit, then yes, it can count towards meeting the education requirements. If it is only accepted or granted by the foreign institution, then it will not. There are several GPAs listed on the application online. Is only the overall GPA at the very top transmitted to schools, or only the undergrad GPA? All of your GPAs are transmitted to the schools. So that's overall, undergrad, graduate, science GPA, non-science GPA. All of those GPAs are sent over to the schools. Do multiple instances of the same course all factor into the PCR, or only the latest instance? Every single instance factors in. Can you apply to other non-Texas schools on AMCAS if you are applying EDP in Texas? So the application will ask if you are applying to other schools. Now, this particular question, if you are, so non-Texas schools. Okay, so I'm thinking about Texas residents versus not. So not thinking about the same thing, sorry. So non-Texas schools, you have to be a Texas resident to apply to EDP programs. I'm going to have to get back to you in terms of whether or not you can apply to non-Texas schools as a Texas resident applying through to an EDP program. So if you could send us, because I don't see your info, if you could send us an email or where we can respond to you directly with that question or the answer to that question. Are these early decision deadlines now September 15th? Some schools have had issues releasing them late. Are you referring to the decision or the application deadline? Not sure. So if we could get Yvonne the link to the deadlines page. Okay. All right, thank you. Do you have any other questions? Are there any main changes in the TMDSAS application since last year, and where can we see what those are? There are not any significant changes to the application this cycle. Thank you for that question. Typically, when there are changes like that, we go ahead and publish those and we talk about them in our presentation, so there aren't any this cycle. Can you include personal health experiences in the activity section? So if you were part of their healthcare team, this is your direct involvement in care, you can include this activity. Again, remember, this is from you talking to the admissions committees about the activities you participated in that have been meaningful to you. If I have an activity that was impactful that occurred throughout high school and after graduating high school, am I able to include it in the activities? You may, but you won't be able to account for the time during high school, but rather since high school graduation. Is there a consensus on virtual scribing and whether or not schools will consider this as healthcare experience given COVID? So I think, given COVID and kind of how that has impacted people's ability to participate in activities, there's definitely an openness and a flexibility to activities that had to appear or had to take place virtually. So, you're going to talk about this activity and what it meant for you as an applicant, but also keep in mind that since we have now, been dealing with pandemic for a couple of years, the schools are going to want to see what you have, attempted to do in that time to make sure that you are engaged in activities that are preparing you. So if this is your experience, you were involved in virtual scribing, then definitely talk about it in the application. Could you come back to add schools later? So does that mean I could submit without MCAT for processing and add schools later? So the answer to both questions is yes. You can submit your application with however many schools you want, and then you can always add schools to your application later. I just want to touch on one thing really quick, and we can leave this question up. But when it comes to the MCAT, even if you have not yet released your scores or they have not come out yet, you do need to indicate your MCAT dates that you have taken or will be taking the test. Okay, Max's question, how important is it to make changes to the 3 essays on TMDSAS for reapplicants? Max, that's really up to you. So if you think that, your previously written essay is the best representation, the best response to those questions, then you may use that. But if you see an opportunity to make some edits, maybe to update some of the information, that's also important. Now we have a reapplicant specific workshop that we did a couple weeks back. And one thing I want to just point out here is as a reapplicant, you definitely want to make sure that you are completing the application history section of the application. This gives an additional opportunity to talk about the activities that you've been engaged in since you applied the last time. So don't skip that opportunity. In terms of writing your activities, what are good ways to stand out? This is a great question. We highly recommend that you use I'm going to totally space on the name right now, but it's the experiences, attributes, and metrics model that AAMC has created to help you kind of frame your experiences and how they have impacted you. So we can, let's see if my team can maybe find that, maybe a link to that model and send you that as a resource so that you can review it. But essentially, a good way to think about this is in terms of the school's mission and values. And so how do the activities that you've been involved in, how have they helped to develop that value system that you have? Do those values align with the schools that you're applying to? These would be things to talk about in your activities as well as in your essays that can maybe make you stand out to the schools that you're applying to so they can see, oh, this individual, carries these qualities that are important to us and our students. Okay, and we have about a minute left. Let's see. What is your advice on applying to all of the TMDSA schools versus just a select few? Well, I think, in just kind of basic terms, you're casting a wider net, right? So you're giving yourself more opportunities to be seen, to be interviewed, and to get that offer for acceptance. Now, you definitely want to do your research about the schools that you're applying to make sure that you are applying to schools that really fit your preferences, maybe your values, your personal mission. But at the same time, consider, that TMDSAS charges a flat rate. So it is the same price to apply to one or all of the medical schools. But again, I think if you feel very strongly about a particular program and that's where you want to go, then send your application there. At the same time, sending it to all of the schools will give you more opportunity. So on that, folks, we have reached the end of our presentation. We really appreciate your time sticking with us through this hour, asking your great questions. I know there were a lot that we did not get to. So please, if you have time, join us for one of our panels next week or for our final workshop, which is just going to be an opportunity to ask anything about the application process. Again, thank you so much. You all have a wonderful day. Take care.